Okay, we've surveyed what's inside this particular frame. We said there was about 4, 5, 6 different species, and I'm going to pull out one that's probably the predominant grass grown in North Carolina, or in the east really, in pastures, especially the cool season region, the temperate region. And I kind of want to go through several things about the plant. We're going to talk about the leaf, the sheath, and then the components of the leaf. It's made up of the leaf blade, which starts where my right finger thumb is all the way out to the tip here on this particular plant. That's the leaf blade. Now normally you will not see leaf blades this long, but this plant probably has not been grazed or clipped for the last 2 months. And then the other part of the leaf that most people don't really recognize, but it really is part of the total leaf, is called the sheath. From my right thumb down to my left one is the sheath, leaf sheath. So I'm going to pull off this leaf off of the base of the plant where the growth really originated. And I'm going to hold the entire leaf in my hand. Okay? So between my two thumbs is the sheath. Between my two thumbs at this point, this is fescue now, is the leaf blade. Now most of the photosynthetic activity is in the leaf blade, not in the sheath. All right, the leaf has, as I said, two parts, the sheath and the blade, and then there's a region here called the collar region between my thumbnails here. And on tall fescue, there's an appendage called the auricle, and in fescue it's very small, and actually you've got to see some other species to really know what this looks like, but we call this a rudimentary auricle. And at the base of this leaf blade, right in this region here, is the area of where an appendage called the ligule is positioned. And tall fescue has almost, it has a very, very small one. You can barely see it. You have to get a hand lens to see it. Then if I turn this leaf over and look at the back side of the collar, can you see the color difference of the base of the leaf? This is kind of pale on both sides of the main stem here. This collar is a divided collar. All right, another aspect of the leaf is the width of the blade. Now, as I said earlier, this blade is very wide because it's got a lot of age on it. The other thing about the leaf, this leaf blade, look at the veins running parallel to the mid vein here. Very characteristic of tall fescue. We'll show you some other plants to show you how they compare. Okay, now the leaf tip of fescue is very pointed. And as a general rule, now this is not always true, but I don't know whether you can see this or not, but right where my finger, I'm going to roll this over my finger. I think I am. Can you see this area about right across there on this leaf blade? That's a constricted area that's pretty common in tall fescue. You don't see it in orchard grass and Bermuda grass and other grasses, but you see it quite common in fescue. So if you look at the kind of the outer inch or two of a leaf blade, you'll see that constricted area most of the time. All right, then there's one other aspect of the fescue plant I want you to think about, and I'm going to take my razor blade and just cut it crossways here. Then I want you to look right into that and see how round that sheath, that stem base is. What this is a whole series of leaf sheaths that are rolled almost like a paper towel around your finger. It's called rolled in the bud. That's characteristic of fescue. When we look at orchard grass, you're going to see it's going to be flattened. It's not going to be round or rolled. All right, now one other aspect of fescue. I'm still holding this fescue tiller. About at this location here, I've cut this off too short. You see these little root hairs? This whole little, we call this a bud, B-U-D. This is the next plant that's going to replace this plant I'm holding in between my finger and my thumb. This plant is a perennial. I mean, fescue is considered a perennial, but these tillers do not live like trees. They live anywhere from a few months to a year, and then they get replaced by new tillers or new plants. They regenerate themselves, and so the stand, when you walk in a field, it may be 40 or 50 or 100 years old of the same grass like fescue, but it won't be the same plants that were there 2 years ago. There'll be new plants that are regenerated every year. All right, now another thing you'll need to recognize, not so much for identification purposes, but for the standpoint of management, is there's a lot of energy stored, a lot of carbohydrates that are captured and metabolized in the plant are stored in the base of this plant between my thumbnails. But the actual cell division is taking place way at the bottom here. I'm going to cut this one more time. Again, see how that is rolled? Again, very characteristic of fescue. Now if I split this down the middle, that little white part of the plant you see there, that's just this bud right here, except he's a baby. So that's going to be the next tiller. And all of the cell division is taking place right in this region. And all the enlargement is taking place in this region, pushing these leaves up. Now let's change tillers here a minute. All right, I'm holding 3 leaves here. Oldest leaf, next oldest leaf, youngest leaf. All 3 of these were being pushed up from that very base of this plant. That's where the enlargement is taking place. It's just extending on out. So again, that doesn't have much to do with identification, but it has a lot to do with how you would manage this grass. Okay, another characteristic of the fescue leaf is the leaf margin. It has what is called a serrated leaf margin, which is just a series of little teeth, almost like a handsaw. And if you want to feel this, if you got real sensitive skin, you can feel that if you push down on the leaf, you can feel that. I can feel it even with my calloused fingers. But if I really want to feel it, I can pull it across my wrist. I can feel the little barbs. Now, orchard grass will not have that. Rescue grass will not have that. Bermuda grass will not have that. This is a characteristic of this particular grass that we find in this state. Okay, on tall fescue, it's considered a bunch grass, but occasionally it will have very short rhizomes. Now, a rhizome is just a stem that's below ground, but it's not very rhizomatous. In other words, you've got to dig a lot of plants to find rhizomes on fescue, whereas on Bermuda grass, almost every plant will have rhizomes, so there's a big difference there. The stolons are stems which fall on the surface of the ground and root at the node. This plant does not have stolons either, and whereas Bermuda grass does. And we'll talk about that when we cover Bermuda grass. Now, I have 2 contrasting tillers or plants of tall fescue here in my hand. One is the real large one that's been here for several weeks. The one on my left hand is smaller. Don't get confused that when you look at these, if you look at all the characteristics we just discussed in terms of which way do the veins run? How prominent are they? The collar region is the same. There's very small auricles there, a very minute ligule. The edge of the leaf, you can feel the serrated edge. But just look at the width of the blade. Look at the width of those two blades. That's the same plant. It's just different age. So don't get confused on size very often, because it can be related to age and lots of other things. All right, we're looking at two plants of the same species, tall fescue. Notice the difference in the width of the leaf. Generally, older plants have wider leaves than younger plants. Not always, but generally. And generally, fescue leaves during the growing season will not be as wide as this one. They're more likely to be the size of this one on the left. And the reason these are so wide right now is this particular plant probably hasn't been grazed for the last 2 months. And in the autumn, cool season plants really put a lot of reserve energy in the plant, and they make some pretty long leaves. Now the contrast I want to show you at the base of this plant is this. I've got 2 tillers. You see this bud here on this plant? This is going to be a new plant. And this one right here is just the same thing except older. And you notice how it's going horizontal, whereas the stem of the plant is vertical. This horizontal stem is probably going to come out 2 or 3 inches from the base of this mother plant and then come up through the surface of the earth and have another plant. Anytime a stem moves along beneath the surface of the soil, it's called a rhizome. So I said earlier, fescue will sometimes have short rhizomes. Here's an example of one. You don't see this very often. Here is a young tiller of a fescue plant, and let's assume that you come in with your lawnmower or your horse or cow or whatever, and they bite this plant where there are no leaves on it. And then somebody sends it to you and wants to know what it is. Can you identify this plant if it doesn't have any leaves on it? Well, chances are no, but I can tell you some things it's not. And what I can tell you, it's not orchard grass, because orchard grass is flat, whereas this specimen I have in my hand is round. So I know it's not orchard grass. I may not know it's fescue, but I know it's not orchard grass. And it's also got no pubescence or no hair on it. So I know it's not Dallas grass. I know it's not bromus, because both of them have lots of little fine hairs down at this part of the plant. Now, it could be several things. It could be annual ryegrass, it could be perennial ryegrass, it could be fescue. I just may not be able to tell, but I'll be able to say it's not Bermuda grass, it's not orchard grass, it's not rescue grass. Now, if I live in an area long enough, which probably, if you sent this to me in North Carolina, I could make a pretty good educated guess looking at that stem right there that that's fescue, just because we have a lot of it. But if you send me to some foreign state and give me a tiller, I wouldn't be able to say with confidence what it was.